Chill or Be Chilled by TotalSkeletonTrash. Chapter 6, in which you make a pretty good burger, pun. Snuggled into bed that night, you can't believe that you're still smiling. God, you are such a dork, but you just cannot get that smile off your face. The afternoon had just been amazing, unreal. You couldn't remember the last time you'd laughed that hard or felt so entirely welcomed. It was like you had spoken some secret code word or something that everyone had been waiting to hear. It was like they'd all been waiting for you. Scratching under Ghost's chin, you allow yourself to play a short highlight reel in your head, still smiling. Lunch had been just, oh God, your ribs ached from laughing. The food had been wonderful. When you got stuck trying to decide if you wanted a burger, hot dog, a salad, or a big order of fries, Sans had leaned in. "Get the burger special, Frisk style," he'd suggested. "It's a fusion cuisine." "Fusion cuisine?" You'd repeated, trying to figure out what he meant. "I don't get it." "Mostly human food, but there's a little bit of magic in there too. Kiddo loves it." Frisk, who had been listening, nodded happily. Wait a second. Listening? You'd gathered that Frisk signed because they were born without hearing. But Sans's mouth just didn't move the same way as yours did, and he didn't sign. So how is Frisk responding? You resolved to ask someone later, then looked back at Sans. "Sorry, guess my joke wasn't that clear," he said with a chuckle. "Well, a good burger joke is a rare medium well done," you said innocently. The table exploded with laughter. Well, except for Papyrus, who was yelling that it wasn't fair for both of you to make bad puns. And yeah, except for Sans, too. He stared at you like he'd never seen anything quite like you. Very slowly, an incredulous, delighted look crossed his face. Oh, you had certainly earned a real smile this time. Everyone noticed in stages, though all of Grillby's had to notice when Papyrus yelled, "Dear human, I apologize! You have managed to silence my brother. Please do come out with us more often. I would enjoy more peace and quiet." Really, Papyrus?" Alphys had to laugh, since Papyrus only had two volume options, loud and off. But when Papyrus's skull swiveled to glare at her, she shrank down into her lab coat. I mean... "Hey, nobody bullies my baby," Undyne declared, hugging Alphys to her side and flexing menacingly with her free arm. Papyrus gulped and began to apologize profusely as Frisk sat back and enjoyed the chaos, a mischievous smile on their face. "You should, though." The voice was quiet enough to just reach your ears. "Come out with, us more often." Sans had a blue tint across both cheeks. Good. At least someone else seemed to be suffering the same blushing fiasco you were. And it was... okay, yeah, you could admit it to yourself. It was cute as all hell. You'd smiled brightly at the short skeleton. "Honestly, I'd love that, if you really don't mind me hanging around," you admitted. "You guys are all just awesome." "Well, right back at ya. Oh, hey, Grilbs." Sans's volume had increased several degrees in magnitude as the proprietor came over to grab your orders. All too soon, you were slumped back in your seat, stuffed and feeling wonderful. Sans hadn't been lying. It had been the best burger you'd ever eaten. "How did it taste so good?" you'd began, grinning at Frisk and gesturing to the empty plate in front of you. Frisk clapped and nodded at their own empty plate, then gave you a quick sign. "Magic," Sans supplied with a smirk. The rest of the afternoon had been a blur of laughing and half-hearted attempts to show Undyne the ropes. Your new friends had been only too willing to look at the animals they'd already looked at again, this time peppering you with all the questions they'd been wondering about the first time. Frisk had known a little more than the monsters, of course, but the kid also liked to make up facts and see if they could get the monsters to believe them. So you'd had to correct a few misapprehensions. No, the sharks could not shoot lasers. Papyrus had a tantrum at this. Yes, the cuttlefish could change colors. No, that wasn't because of magic, Frisk. If it had been anyone else, you would have said that Sans was showing off. He was all smiles. He had been since the restaurant, where he'd put away a whole bottle of ketchup, making eye contact with you frequently, as if he was hoping you'd make a comment. You'd decided not to play into his hand that easily, and had simply given him a lazy smile in return, as if you saw skeletons drinking bottles of ketchup every day. But that had only spurred him on. For every animal you'd showed them, he'd had a flurry of puns to unleash, though you'd had twice as many ready to retort with. Hey, you'd worked at the aquarium for a while, and until Undyne had showed up, the animals had, sadly, been your closest companions at work. You'd had plenty of time to think up every possible joke. As usual, though, Sans seemed less put out than absolutely thrilled that you were sometimes able to beat him at his own game. In fact, you were sure he was setting you up for your jokes a few times, since he laughed harder than usual when you completed the obvious pun. You'd never been so reluctant to leave a tour group before, but suddenly it was already practically closing time. You and Undyne had real work to do. Those fish wouldn't throw themselves. You bid a reluctant farewell to Alphys, Papyrus, Frisk, and Sans, though not before Papyrus had urgently typed your phone number into his and Frisk's phone. "Trust me, it's better this way. He'll figure it out anyway," Sans had advised. Before you two had to peel off, plans to meet up again were brewing already. Alphys wanted to watch anime, but they'd already gone through the library's supply of VHS tapes. So she'd shyly asked you if you could explain how all the people on the computer were watching these shows. After several confusing minutes, you'd figured out that the monster internet and the human internet were two very different things. The monster one could store actual physical objects. No wonder they'd never weaned themselves off VHS tapes. Eventually, after a good deal of silent thought on the pros and cons, you just told her that she and anyone else was welcome to come over and watch whatever on Netflix. It wasn't like you didn't have the space, right? Or the giant TV. They'd all been staggeringly enthusiastic about it, enough that you felt pretty damn certain that they weren't just being nice to you because you were Undyne's weird coworker who had once pestered Sans in a waiting room. Papyrus had promised to bring food, which prompted a pleased look from Undyne and a mildly panicked look from Alphys. Sans had merely grinned at you, his hands in his pockets. "I'll bring some snacks too, pal. No worries," he'd insisted, giving Papyrus a fond look when Papyrus began to argue that wouldn't be necessary because he'd make enough pasta for everybody. "Just in case anyone wants something that's not spaghetti, bro." "How could that be possible?" Papyrus's horror was genuine, and you had just barely managed not to laugh. "So awesome! We'll all crash Reed's house tomorrow," Undyne said, looking remarkably pleased. After some quick signs from Frisk, she sighed and added, "Except for the squirt who's going to stay home and eat pie with their mommy like a baby." Her attempt to rile Frisk up failed entirely. Frisk simply nodded contentedly, looking so sweetly at her that she eventually had to sigh and ruffle Frisk's hair. "You're too cute, kid," she'd muttered. You agreed. Lying in bed, the highlights reel begins to flicker and warp as you think about this part. This had definitely not been your favorite part. They were actually coming here. You hadn't had anyone here not since the monsters left the underground, at the very least. Maybe this was all a bad idea. Maybe you shouldn't have stuck your neck out like this. You don't want this to happen all over again. It's been such a short amount of time, but you can't stand the thought of losing them, him, like that. Oh God, they would just form assumptions. They'd think you had so much that you were just coasting by, being selfish. They'd think so little of you, and then they'd leave, and they'd leave another damn hole in your heart. That was the thing. You'd done this before. You'd told this story a few times, how you ended up on your own in a place that was too big, with a cat that was too old, and rooms that were too empty and had too many memories. Nobody wanted to be around after that. They either wanted money you didn't have and they left when they saw you weren't lying about that, or they just faded away, not liking to think about what you'd been through. You scraped away all the fur and skin and blood and magic, and people and monsters, you figured, they were the same. They didn't feel comfortable when they had to acknowledge loss or sadness or pain, and so they avoided it. They came by less until they never came by at all. You had to brace yourself, get ready for that, because you knew it was coming. You'd let yourself get attached already. You'd spent a golden afternoon feeling like you were fine and had friends, the sincerest people you'd ever met. Now it was time to get ready for them to slip away. After all, monster history said humans were horrible. He was going to be horrified. Hey pal, just wanted to thank you for showing us all around today. You gathered your optimism back up into a little ball and smiled at the text. He was awfully sweet. I had so much fun. I should be thanking you for getting my lunch, too. Told ya, least I could do. Think I owe you again, anyway. Paps and the kiddo couldn't shut up about having the best day ever the whole way home. Aw, that's awesome. And, well, cute. Sans considered it a personal favor that you'd showed Papyrus and Frisk a good time. You found it pretty damn endearing, the way he seemed to watch out for the people he loved. It's a great place, isn't it? It's got great people working there. Oh man, you are smiling like a lovesick schoolgirl. Come on, dial it back some, Reeds. You work with penguins, for fuck's sake. You should understand how to play it cool. Cool was your whole deal. You were making penguin jokes in your head now. This is how it all ends. You grit your teeth and pick up your phone again. Especially now that Undyne started. There, totally chill. Hard to tell where the greatness is coming from. Tell you what, how about sometime soon I take you out somewhere and we can see if you're great solo? Eee! Okay, got that out of your system, right? Maybe just a little more. Eee! Ghost is staring at you like you have 3 heads. You try to wait a few minutes before you respond, but barely make it to 2 before you send a response. Sounds great. 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 Good night, Sans. Great. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, hit the like button to let me know and subscribe to see what I make next. Links in the description lead to the original fic posted on AO3, as well as my Patreon and Ko-fi. If you like my stuff, please consider supporting me. Every little bit helps. Lastly, if you have a request for a recording, whether a one-shot or a series, let me know in the comments. I also do commissions, details of which are on my Patreon. So keep in touch. Bye!